Well, the two verses that we have before us this morning are James, the letter of James, chapter 4, and verse 11 and 12. I shall read these verses. James 4, 11 and 12. Speak not evil one of another, brethren. We can add sisters. He that speaketh evil of his brother or sister, and judgeth his brother or sister, speaketh evil of the law, and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver, who is able to save and to destroy. Who art thou that judgest another? I've taken as my title this morning, Speech and Language Therapy. I mentioned a few weeks ago at the beginning of a message that message needed a health warning. But when you read these two verses, what needs a health warning is you and me. We are very dangerous individuals because we have a tongue that can cause much damage, much hurt, much offense. A tongue, speech and language therapy. Of all the books in the Bible, there are probably two which say more about the tongue than any other books. 20% of the letter of James, it has been estimated, is about the tongue, our speech, our communication. The book of Proverbs that we read from earlier addresses the subject of the tongue and speech. It speaks about gossips, tale-bearers, slanderers, and those that defame. So why does the Bible say so much about the tongue? Because that's caused more damage than any other member of our body. With the tongue, we kill. With the tongue, we destroy. With the tongue, wars start. The tongue, of course, is the revealer of the heart. We only speak because of what's in the heart. The heart thinks, it weighs up, it has thoughts, it has feelings, it has emotions, and they come pouring out unless they have been checked. We could say, really, the whole Bible is about the Word. We call it the Word. Certainly the letter of James is about the Word and the tongue. And the context here in verse 11 and 12 is very directly about the tongue. Just to remind you of some of the verses in James, it's useful to recap because they add more emphasis when you put them together. If you go back to chapter 1, we considered this some months ago. Chapter 1 and verse 19, my beloved brethren. He's speaking to Christians. Brothers and sisters, they probably were known to James. James was the pastor at Jerusalem. Many of the believers have been persecuted and scattered out through the countries like Turkey, as it would be today. And he speaks to them about the big issue, the tongue. And he says in verse 19, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. We put it the other way round, don't we? We are slow to hear, quick to speak, and even quicker to get angry. Then you look down at verse 26 of the same chapter. If any of you seem to be religious and bridleth not his tongue, you are deceived. The tongue is a good indicator whether somebody truly has heart religion. Is it just what they say, or is what they say what they do, and what they do what they are? And then in chapter 3, skipping over various other verses, in verse 1, he says, be very careful about which of you become teachers, which of you become masters, which of you set yourself up to teach and speak to others, because those that have that responsibility, they will have even greater condemnation. Verse 2, it expands the point. It says, for in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body. So we come down to chapter 4 and verse 11 and verse 12. There is an echo here of Christ's own teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew chapter 7 and verse 1, he says these words, speaking on the mountain, judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured unto you again. It's somewhat similar. Speak not evil. The literal word is the word for slander. And it's made up of two Greek words. It means to speak and to speak against. So Thomas Manton, a famous Puritan, said, this speaking evil or slander or gossip is speaking about a person which is to the prejudice or damage of another, whether it be true or false. You see, we think quite often, oh, it's true, so I can say it. No. Maybe it's not your truth to tell. Maybe it's true, but it would certainly be damaging. Any speaking about a person which is to the prejudice or the damage of another, whether it be true or false. I want to turn you back to Psalm 78. You might wonder, why am I going back to Psalm 78? Because we see an extreme example of speaking evil. In this case, it's speaking evil against God. Look at verse 19. Psalm 78, verse 19. Perhaps we read from verse 18. They tempted God in their heart, that's where the words came from, by asking for meat for their lust. Yea, they spake against God, same idea, speaking against. They said, can God furnish a table in the wilderness? If it's possible, which it is, to speak against God, who has all power, all knowledge, and he can do anything, well, the argument is, it's far easier for me to speak about you and you to speak about me, because there's so many things wrong with my life and your life. And yet, here they spoke against God. They said, look, there's 3 million of us here in the wilderness. We've left Egypt. We're on this journey to the promised land. How can God feed 3 million people? How can he put a table, a banquet out and feed all of us? God can't do it. There's no water here. There's no food. God can't do it. They spoke against God. They slandered him. They belittled him. They said he's a little God. He can't do that. They doubted him. They spoke badly against him. They undermined his reputation. And yet, that's exactly what we do one to another. They did it to God without cause. Because, of course, God had demonstrated that he could do more than feed. He had given a way of escape, and he did feed them. It says back in Psalm 78 that God was wroth. He heard this. And remember this from the outset. Our first heading is speaking evil. It's a direct exhortation that speaking evil is something that God condemns. Slander, gossip, tale-bearing, tittle-tattle is something that God strongly condemns. He heard them doing it about him. And he says, therefore the Lord heard this and was wroth. We know that God hears everything. He sees everything. He is a discerner of man's thoughts. But people do it today, don't they? They say, how can a God of love, or how can God allow suffering, war, and pain? That's one of the most commonly asked questions. On the bookstall, we have a little tract about it. You can pick up a copy at the back. It's a question that people ask, how can God? Well, the answer to that question is, it depends which God you have. It depends if you have the God of the Bible or a small God. How can God feed 3 million people? What God do you have? What God do you worship? The God of the Bible can feed the world, not just 3 million people. Now, the answer to that question, without getting distracted, is we live in a fallen world. Who's responsible for the fall? God? No. Adam and Eve are representatives. The representative of every man and every woman was Adam and Eve. They were responsible for sin, the fall, death, and decay. And all pain and suffering and loss and hardship directly stems from their choice, not God's choice. God protected them. He put them in a garden. He said, don't go, don't touch, don't eat. And they went. And they disobeyed. God is actively involved in the suffering and the pain of the world. He's not disinterested. He may not be responsible for it, but in the midst of brokenness and war and heartache and suffering and loss, God is there, showing his love, dealing with the two thieves on either side. One wouldn't have him. One would. They spoke against God. So back to our text in James 4. Speak not evil one of another. What he has in mind is when we're speaking about somebody and they're not there. We're too timid to say what we would have said to their face. In fact, we wouldn't say it to their face. And very often that's a test as to whether we should be saying what we're saying. If they were here, would we say it? It's not the only test. He goes on, speak not evil one of another, brethren. Notice how often James in this letter, brethren, several of the chapters he starts, brethren. This is a family. He's saying, you are my blood relatives. Because we have the same bloodline, Christ. And you're going to speak about a brother or sister as though they were not part of the family. We have a term, don't we? Family honor. I was reading an article yesterday that said 1 in 4 families in America have deeply entrenched, broken relationships where a parent is not in contact, is not speaking, is not willing to meet with a child. 1 in 4. So entrenched. There's been a fracture, there's been a breakdown. Why? Probably, nearly always, because of the tongue. Because of something that was said on such and such a day that's never gone from the memory. And since then, they never get together. They never have a family meal together and speak openly. Because there's been a fracture. Speak not evil one of another. And that could be true in the church. I'm not aware of it. I'm not coming this morning because I'm aware of problems between brother and sister. I hope not. We're not to let the sun go down on our anger. We're to deal with problems today as far as it lies within me. I'm to live at peace with people I like. No, it doesn't say that. All men. And so, as blood relatives, which if you are Christians this morning, you may not like it, you are my blood relative. I am not to speak evil about you and against you, speaking evil. There's been a famous case, and I don't want to mention this because it really revolves around horrible things, but there's been a famous case in the High Court in this country of defamation. What is defamation? It's damaging somebody's character. And that's what's involved here. Slander, speaking against. If we are to be the church that God wants us to be, that represents Christ, we are to have no evil speaking. 1, 2, or of, or about another. Well, the second heading this morning, he that speaketh evil of his brother judgeth his brother. Second heading, judging the law. Now I have to explain this because at first reading these 2 verses, you may not understand quite what it means. James is providing an interesting argument. He's saying that if we speak evil one of another, it's as though we've become a judge. We've risen up and we've put those curly white things that the judges wear and the gowns, and we've become the judge. Nobody asked us to. We're not qualified to do that, but we've appointed ourselves as the judge. We are judging the law. Now that doesn't mean that we're taking a different view to the law. What it means is we're standing above. We've put ourselves above the law. We're not judged by the law. We're going to use the law to judge others. You see, speaking evil of others is really self-conceit. It's saying, I would not do that. I'm not like that. It's saying I don't care whether I damage somebody's reputation, I defame them, I speak badly of them and I run them down. And even if we don't mean to run them down, we mean to lift ourselves up. This is very searching and challenging. It's a form of pride. When you speak against somebody else, you are in effect lifting up yourself. It's like the playground pivot that the children sit on. If one goes down, the other comes up. If I can push them down, I look better. I wouldn't do that. I'm not like that. I wouldn't go there. Did you hear? It's been said, it only takes one mouth to speak against somebody, but it takes 2 ears to listen. You see, if you don't listen to slander and gossip, the person, I don't need to hear that. No, thank you. That's my friend. That's a fellow church member. That's somebody Christ died for. I'm sorry, that's what we're to do. We stand above the law. In July 2012, there was a judge called Judge Houghton, and he was sentenced. He sentenced a defendant for jail for possessing certain images on his computer. The judge saw the images, and in the summing up, as the judge does at the end of the case, he highlighted the severe consequences, the terrible nature of this crime, and he deterred everybody else from such conduct. Just 11 months later, Judge Houghton was investigated for his own offences in an almost identical case. Appalling images held on his computer. The judge that stood above and looked down and spoke so strongly to the defendant who was found guilty, the judge was actually guilty himself. And you know, that's what we do when we speak evil of others, because of course we are not great ourselves. We have done, we have been, we have said, and even if we haven't yet, be careful, take heed. Pride goes before a fall. And very often the things that we say, I wouldn't do that. Just be careful. Very often, people are then found guilty for what they've accused and tittle-tattled and spread and tale-bared around the network and the community, and they're found guilty themselves. Speak not evil one of another. We judge the law. We're naturally appalled when we hear about indecent images. We think that's a crime that's beyond comparison. And it is. There is degrees of sin. But you be very careful. What you watch with your eyes and what images are at the back of your mind and your heart. Be very careful. You see, what we do is we forget 2 things. Our third heading, we forget who God is and we forget who we are. You see, if we're to find ourselves speaking evil and out it comes, tale-bearing, gossiping, slandering, running somebody down, I probably shouldn't say this, but invariably we do. We forget who God is. And we stop becoming a doer of the law. The term here for law is a very wide one. It means the gospel, it means the truth, it means the Bible, it means all of revealed truth. We are not a doer of God's will, we could put. But we've become a judge over who else is and who isn't obeying God's will. It reminded me of those words spoken to Moses in Exodus chapter 2. Remember, he'd gone out and he had killed an Egyptian. And he thought it was a secret. He thought nobody had seen. But they had. Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? So Moses feared and said, surely This thing is known. Never be fooled. God sees everything. Is there a thief here this morning? God saw. God saw what you took. Is there somebody with an eye problem? God saw. We're speaking about words. God heard what you said to run down that person. God is the supreme lawgiver. Only He can judge fairly. Only He can judge with justice. Only He has the right and the authority and the supremacy and the sovereignty to be a judge over any life. Now, I know some of you are thinking now, what does that mean? We should never have a view? Should we never call out what's wrong? Should we never criticize and call a spade a spade? No, I don't think it's saying that. We are entitled to say, that's wrong. That shouldn't have happened. That shouldn't have been said. That shouldn't be. But be very careful. You see, we have two problems. We have the problem of lack of knowledge. We have the problem that we are lawbreakers. You see, we don't always know the circumstances, do we? We speak about somebody and we don't know the half. We don't know what went on behind closed doors. We know what people have said. We know what people have accused that person of, but we don't know the facts. So be very careful when you point the finger and say, have you heard? Well, you may only have heard the half. You see, we're not perfect. Only God is, and only therefore God can judge. We're not lawmakers, we're lawbreakers. And so we shouldn't be making the law, standing above it and enacting it. And we only have partial knowledge of most situations. Swift to hear, slow to speak, even slower to be angry, says James. Only God has the right to judge, because only God has perfect knowledge, all authority and all power, and therefore only He should determine what's right in the main. So we go back to the previous verse, which gives us the context, verse 10. Humble yourself. What causes me to be a gossip? Some people have a reputation. If you want news to travel, you only have to tell one person, and you know it will go round. I've done it before. Sometimes when it's good news, they say good news travels fast. I can tell you this, gossip travels even quicker. I used the illustration recently. It's like a pillow full of feathers. Once that pillow has been scattered, you try picking up the feathers. It's impossible. They'll be blown on the wind. They'll go here, there, and everywhere. Be very careful. We need to eat humble crumble. We need to be very careful what we say with our lips. We need to be very cautious. Remember who you are. Remember what you've done. Remember what you've been. Remember what you've said. You see, what are the motives that make us speak against? Let me give you 4. It may be it's revenge. You don't really like that person and they once said something about you, and therefore you're going to ... You're going to get back. You're going to try and bring them down a little bit. Take some air out of the balloon. Secondly, it could be not just revenge. It could be pride or self-promotion. We've spoken about that. It could be worse. It could be malice. You actually don't want them to have a good reputation, and so you do your best to bring it down. Fourthly, motives, negative motives. It could be that your problem is you just speak too much. Talkative. Words flow apace. You find it too easy to share things. In fact, you like to have information to share things. If you've not got anything to share, go and get some. Why is that magazine called Tatler? I've never read it. But most of what's inside its pages would not pass any of the tests of the Bible. Is it true? Probably not. Is it loving? Certainly not. Is it edifying? Definitely not. Is it needful? Certainly not. So these are the motives. What is the best use of the tongue? We've thought this morning about the damage, the destruction, the harm, the hurt that the tongue can cause. We're told, don't speak evil one of another, especially amongst brethren and sisters. What is the best use of the tongue? Let me suggest to you, the best use of the tongue is prayer. Prayer. You feel a need to speak? Pray. The second best use of the tongue is praise. In praise of God and in praise of others, appreciation, thankfulness, respect. A third good use of the tongue. And if there's none of this in your life, it may be it says a lot about the heart. We're to use the tongue for prayer, for praise, and for witness. If you don't speak about Christ, then maybe Christ isn't the most important person for you. If you speak about other things and other people, but you won't speak of Christ, then maybe there's something missing. Maybe that tongue needs to be taken out. A famous Puritan once said, when he heard of the problem of gossip, he said, "Do you know, I wish I had been dumb, unable to speak, than to have a tongue that causes the damage of gossip and slander." Is it true? That's not sufficient. Is it loving? Would I want it said of me? Is it edifying? Does it build up? Or does it push down? Is it needful? Is it the right place, the right time, the right person to be saying what you're intending to say? Speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother and judges and stands above his brother speaks evil of the law and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. And we close with verse 12. There is one lawgiver, and it's not me, and it's not you. And that lawgiver is able to save and to destroy. It's the law that will either lead us to a Savior or cause us to have punishment and justice inflicted upon us. And one of the reasons that God will punish sin is because he hates slander and gossip. Psalm 78, they spoke against God and he was wroth. If we can speak against God, which we have and we do, we must not speak against one another. May the Lord help us this morning to keep a control of our tongue. We close with our final hymn, 732. 732. It's a hymn that is really a prayer asking for God's help through life, through the challenges and the difficulties. Lead us, Heavenly Father, lead us o'er the world's tempestuous sea. Guard us, guide us, keep us, feed us, for we have no help but Thee. 732.